Today. I have several different media outlets that have reached out to ask me what is happening in special education right now. What are some of the worries, the fears, the solutions, the different things that are going on, and what can parents do about that? So it's been a really interesting conversation to have. The first person that I interviewed with today has a child with an IEP. I didn't know that when they asked me to come onto their show. I'll put the links and all those things up once they get published. But it's always interesting to be speaking to the media and trying to explain what is happening in special education right now if they don't understand special education at all, because we use a lot of jargon in special education, right? We use a lot of terms that people don't understand outside of our community. Sometimes people don't understand them when they're inside of our community. There's a big learning curve when it comes to that jargon. So one of the biggest things that the different media outlets are asking me is about access to resources, access to really support the IEP document and what's happening. There's not a whole lot happening, is there? There's not a whole lot happening. Now, there was a question asked to me this morning. I just finished one interview. I'm getting ready for the next one, but there was a question asked to me of, are people afraid that children are going to be behind in the fall? Behind of what? Behind of projected progress? Yes. Behind the other students, that's not what IEPs are about. IEPs are not about making sure a child learns exactly like the other children at the same time, in the same way, doing the same stuff. So that's not what an IEP is about anyway. But are we going to be behind those projected goals of where we're supposed to be at the end of the school year, what we're supposed to be working on over the summer, and what we're supposed to be doing in the fall? Absolutely, we're going to be behind. Could we be further ahead in areas that are not currently documented in the IEP? Yep, we could be. Now, we absolutely need to be documenting what's happening during this shutdown, crisis, schooling extravaganza that we're in right now. But I'm seeing progress happening in homes that would have never happened had we been in school or only had an 8-week break. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying this is awesome that we don't have school and we don't have IEPs and we don't have these support services. I'm not saying that at all. Okay. No way. But are there areas of the education that cannot be addressed at school, that need to be addressed at home, that truly do help prepare a child for further education, employment, independent living? Absolutely. Remember, I didn't come up with those 3 categories. That's in the purpose and findings of IDEA Law. Not a lawyer. I don't practice law. I tell you where to look. In fact, that's what I teach all of my master IEP coaches. If you're not familiar with the Master IEP Coach mentorship and network, then head on over to masteriepcoach.com. I'll actually get you guys that link right here. So masteriepcoach.com, this is where the idea bringers, solution finders, team builders, community connectors are all working together. That's parents, teachers, admins, therapists, getting all the things that you need to make sure that you don't feel like you're extra behind. Okay. Everybody's going to feel like there's been lost ground. Everybody's going to feel like they've been left behind. Everybody's going to feel that way. But there are some people that are going to be in a better headspace and a better spot in general to move forward out of this crisis than others. That's just a fact. And that's exactly what we're working on in the Master IEP Coach Mentorship. So I'm going to highly recommend that if you are ready to really master the IEP process for your own family or for your own students, and you want to help other families do that too, that's where you head over to that. Okay. So I was on Instagram earlier this morning and I had asked What would you want the media to know when they say what's happening in special education? Now, I'm working with thousands of IEP teams across the nation every month on what's happening, what's going to happen next, all of those things. But I'm still only one person, and I have my own opinions, my own perspective, my own kind of experience that I have right now, right? I want to know, what would you say? What would you say? Oh, what Molly's saying, can I share this video on my personal page? Yes, absolutely. Share this, because the more people who understand what's happening in special education and the critical situation that we're in, the better we're going to be in the fall to have collaborative efforts to move forward out of this crisis. That's where I'm focusing at. Because what's happening is happening. I can't change it. I can't make it go faster. I can't open the schools back up. I can't make the virus go away. Can't do it. Can't do that. But what I can do is work with hundreds of master IEP coaches and give them the best tools, the best support, the best knowledge, the best insights on how to move forward while we're still in it and as we move through it and out of this crisis. That's what's going to be so important. You know, we have to just kind of get to the point where like, yep, therapy's not happening. Teletherapy's either working or it's not working. What do you do next? You know, the reading program that we're doing virtually, it's either working or it's not working. What are we going to do next? These IEP goals that are in this document, they're either being worked on or they're not being worked on. What are we going to do next? I see no reason for us to be sitting in shock anymore. I really don't. I get it. It was a gut punch when this happened. Schools shut down. What? I mean, who would have ever thought, right? Nobody would have ever thought that all of a sudden the nation could just shut down. Over 80% of the schools are shut down in this country. Here's my I don't like fear. I don't really live in fear. Here's my concern. If it was so easy to shut it down now, is it going to be easy to shut it down in the future? And I'm not saying it wasn't a tough decision, but what I'm saying is once the decision was made, it was like, bye-bye, doors closed. And I don't like that it happened like that fast, because it tells me like once it's done once, how's this going to work going forward? I'm also concerned about some of the states that are already projecting in July and August and September to have alternative education plans that do not have students on campus full-time as they were before. Shoot, we got to prepare for that. And that's exactly what Master IEP coaches are doing. We have what we call Master IEP Coach methods. We have methods that are absolutely key to getting through virtual IEP meetings successfully. And this is not just for parents, guys. Teachers are struggling, admins are struggling, therapists are struggling. Anybody who sits at the IEP table is in new territory. And Master IEP coaches, we work with everyone. All right. So in fact, we have all different backgrounds in our current mentorship. It starts officially in June, but I'm coaching through the crisis right now because we don't have time to wait till June, right? So we have Master IEP Coach methods for virtual IEP meetings. We have Master IEP Coach methods for extended school year. We have them for distance learning plans. And by no means is it like written in stone, all students should have this in their extended school year plan. Nope. But I can teach you how to individualize it. All students should have this in their remote learning plan, distance learning plan, whatever they're going to call it in your school district. Nope, there is no all students should have, but there's definitely these questions need to be asked. There's absolutely it's an art and a science together. There are specific things that need to be asked due to the regulations of an IEP, and then there's an art to getting that done, because those regulations were not set up for a time like this. This would have never been projected. So if you were getting interviewed. I got another interview. I'm getting put on a special education lawyer's podcast because she's been listening in to my podcast, which is called the Special Education Inner Circle, about how I don't call this distance learning or remote learning or whatever other schools are. I call it crisis schooling. This is crisis schooling. This is about figuring out priorities and stabilizing what needs to happen right now, today, and going forward. We got to move through it. So what would you tell the media? I'm curious. I want to hear it. Now, if this isn't going on a media interview, which means you don't have to have a filter, okay? I have a filter to make sure that I can connect with as many people as possible when I'm getting interviewed. I'm making sure that I'm talking to the audience who's listening to this lawyer who's going to interview me. I want as many people as possible to be able to hear and connect, because the more people who understand our community, the better off we're going to be in the future as we move forward. Because guys, people who make special education decisions do not always have special education experience. I'm going to say that again for you. People who make special education decisions do not always have special education experience. So the more people that we can get educated on what's happening in the special education community and how there's such extreme limited access and that there are no plans for moving forward, and all the things that are happening. All right. The amount of, blood, sweat, tears, and money that parents have put in to get services for their children, to try to work with the schools, all just disappeared. Think about that. Maybe you weren't that parent, but I want you to think about that parent that paid some lawyer $15,000 to go through some crazy legal system to get more speech therapy, and now it doesn't exist. And you guys know, I've been doing this for 20 years, and I've never sent a parent through state complaints or due process. Some people are like, well, then you're not doing your job. That's not true. I am doing my job. My job is to make sure that a child's prepared for further education, employment, independent living with more results, less stress, as fast as possible. That's my job as a master IEP coach. That's my job, to teach others on how to do that. And going through state complaints and due process, I'm not saying there's not a time and a place, but I am saying that they're not used correctly a lot of times in special education. But for that parent who was pointed in that direction, for that school system that paid their lawyer to go to due process and say, like, all of those things are like gone. All right. So we have to truly think about, what are we going to do moving forward to make sure that we can get, and I don't want to say back on track, because I don't want to get back on track to what was happening 2 months ago. I don't want it. I don't know one person who was 1,000,000% happy in special education. Not one. Maybe somebody who was like 90% happy. Okay. But I don't know anybody who's 100% happy. Why would we go back and say, I want to be back on that plan? Maybe I want that plan as a foundation, but what else? What else? What's next? How do we move through it? Let's go that way. Let's see. Lorena, who is a master IEP coach in North Carolina, she says, here's what I would say. The more time we have to prepare for fall, the better it will be for our children and students who have IEPs. So make decisions soon. Capitals, soon. Time flies. I know we want to fact gather about COVID, but it's here for the foreseeable future. So let's roll with that. Yes. All right. So I'm the founder of the Master IEP Coach Mentorship, but I empower Master IEP coaches to have their own voice, to build their own practice, to improve their role at the IEP table, whatever their current role is, and then bring in that additional role of being a master IEP coach for themselves and for others. And I love how Lorena just jumps right in there and is like, let's just make some decisions, because we don't sit around just to push paperwork and fight over missed speech therapy. Like, we're not doing it. We're not doing it. We're going to find solutions. We are the idea bringers, solution finders, team builders, and community connectors of the IEP team. Let's see. Lynette says, some kids are being left behind. The special education team is ignoring some students who are making no efforts. Absolutely. The media has no idea. School districts who are doing a good job, some of them even a great job through this, are mind-blowing when they find out that there are schools that have not even called a mom like Lynette. All right. So this is what Lynette says. The education team is ignoring some students and making no effort to connect. That is not acceptable. No. So if you are on an IEP team and you have been fearful to connect with a parent like Lynette, stop. Lynette's like, yes, this situation is terrible, but ignoring me doesn't make it better. Reach out. Even if your district has no idea what they're doing and you're afraid that you're going to get thrown under the bus from the parent, I don't care. Reach out. You have to put on your big girl panties. You got to reach out and you got to say, hey, this sucks. I'm sorry. Let's do this. Let's decide what we need to do together. Let's see. We have Joanne who is saying that she's doing it all as a mama. The therapy, the education, the behavioral support, fighting for survival, and thriving for our daughter. Exactly right. We have all roles. That's actually one of the first interviews that I did was with NPR, and they asked me a question, and I'm not sure exactly how they phrased it, but I said, parents are becoming the teachers, the advocates, the therapists, the caregiver. They're everything. They're everything all in one. I can't stop that, right? Because you're going to do what you got to do for a child. I can't stop that. But what I can do is make sure that you have the things that you need to move forward through this. Because again, it's time to get out of the shock. Oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening. Yep. We're going into May. Last day of April, and I said, okay, March felt like it took forever. April, I don't know where it went. So what are we going to do in May? What are we going to do in May that's going to make a difference? That's where we need to be focused. So let's see. Our kiddos need mental health support. Isolation is unnatural. Absolutely. My brother, who has Down syndrome, he is 42 years old, and he is not used to isolation. He's also in a high-risk group, not just because of Down syndrome, because of other medical complexities. Thyroid, heart, diabetes, and Down syndrome, all rolled into one awesome package of my brother. And mental health-wise, I'll be quite honest with you, he was not doing good. He was extremely upset that he can't see his friends, and he's involved with Gigi's Playhouse. If you guys aren't familiar, that's a Down syndrome organization that is awesome in providing so many things, and he's recently got involved with them, and he's had a significant amount of job training and socialization and activities and things through Gigi's, and now they're doing it through Zoom, and that's great that they're doing that, but it's not the same. We all know that, right? It's not the same. So what he was doing, so my dad passed from cancer over a decade ago. Yeah, over a decade ago. He was asking to go to the cemetery to go visit my dad. Guys, that's how lonely he is. This is not normal for our kids. It's not normal for us. And it's not normal for our adults with disabilities. They're struggling too. So I made a decision. For those of you that watch my Instagram stories, you guys know that my mom and my brother are my neighbor. Okay, so we live in like a condo building, and literally, I'm going to give you guys too much information because you know what? Whatever. My mom's ceiling is our floor. Okay, like we are that close. And when all of this started, my girls, I have two girls, they're teenagers, I put them on lockdown away from my mom. We call them Grammy, or Grammy and Uncle. So it's my mom's Grammy and my brothers, we just call him Uncle. I put them on lockdown from Grammy and Uncle. And they were taking social distancing walks, right? They were talking to each other, taking social distancing walks and doing that. For mental health reasons, I've started to allow my children to go visit with my brother and my mom, but more for my brother. Because when you are stressed out, you can't stay healthy either. And he wasn't doing well. We haven't even really talked a whole lot. You guys know me as the person who talks all about special education, but I live the adult world of special needs every day of my life. And what's happening there is devastating. It's absolutely devastating of what's happening there. All right. So I wouldn't want to stop that. It's just crisis. So we're just doing it. Yep. What would you advise for a child who has severe behavioral issues with the class, but one-on-one time with the teacher does great? I feel my son isn't getting benefits from the class time. So Sarah, number one, I love this question because you're like, all right, let's talk about what's going to happen when we get back. I love that. I love that. Okay. So what would you advise for a child who has severe behavioral issues with class, but one-on-one time with the teacher does great? Okay. So I'm going to jump up to like 10,000 foot view of life and IEPs. And a lot of people, when they ask questions like this, they're like, just give me the answer. I can't give you the exact answer for your child. I don't know your child. Anybody who pretends like they can give you an answer because they've given your child a test and they labeled them with a diagnosis, or they've worked with your child for a bit so they know the answer. Not true. Remember, I just told you I'm a special needs sibling. Okay. So, all right. Here's what I want you to think about. The entire purpose of a child's IEP, which includes placement, is to prepare a child for further education, employment, and independent living. So my question is, what skills does your child need to reach their potential in further education, employment, and independent living? Now, further education, some people look at that and they're just like, Catherine, my child's not going to college. Okay, but are you learning right now? I hope you're learning something here with me today, right? Are you learning right now? Are you watching a video? Are you learning? Is your child going to learn something from a YouTube video in the future? Learning, further education can be formal or informal, okay? Independent living can be living with your family or away from your family. My brother is extremely independent. He also lives with my mom. My mom also jokes around and calls him, okay, don't take offense to this. Told you, I don't know. I just have no filter today when it comes to this TMI stuff, but she says he's my butler. He loves to take care of all the things and make sure everything's in its right spot. And he helps out around the house and he takes care of himself and he takes the dog out and he does all those things. So he does so much. He's so independent. In fact, he's probably more independent with my mom than he would be if he was living in an assisted living place that had caregivers that wanted things to move faster. My mom has the most patience for how long he takes to do things. I do not have that patience for how long he takes to do things like put on his shoes to take the dog out. Okay. So when I'm looking at placement, when I'm looking at behavioral stuff, when I'm looking at supports, I'm looking at what's the end goal. So a lot of times in schools, we go, how do we take care of the crisis? And then we stay there. We stay there in crisis resolution mode. And we don't move a child forward outside of being extremely prompt dependent or one-on-one dependent on things, okay? So your child does awesome one-on-one with the teacher. Where's the plan to build independence? So maybe your child's not getting benefits from class time because the choice is one-on-one or with the class. Okay. So we have this here. Anna says, I feel the same. My child has autism and has behavioral issues and home is not always working. Totally get it. I totally get it. So right now in crisis, we got to do what we got to do in survival mode, right? going forward, what are we going to do in that IEP to make sure that your child is learning more skills to be independent? You know, it's one thing, okay, fine, we learn how to read a book, but if we learn how to read a book, but we don't know how to be independent in other areas, and I'm not saying one's more important than the other, and I'm not saying that you choose either or. A lot of people in special education feel like you're either A, going to learn life skills, or B, you get an academic track. It's not either or. Schools have set it up that way. I'm not clueless. I know. That's why I do what I do. Okay. So you have to be able to look at, Anna, of, okay, you got to do what you got to do now, but what do you have to do when you get back to that IEP? Maybe you need to like rip up the IEP and just start from scratch and say, you know what? And I had a special needs parent say this. She says, I have a glimpse into my future right now. She has a daughter who has autism and is home full time and is right. Everybody's home full time right now, most people. And she's getting a glimpse into the future of what her house is going to look like. She's having some really good moments, and she's having some really, sad's not the right word, because I think grief and sadness is different. She's having some grieving moments. Okay. So what does she need to do when schools get back in to help prepare her child for this lifestyle of not going to school every day when that child turns 22? Okay. So Anna, I want you to really think about maybe just not looking at how do we fix this IEP that we have and fix that focus into how do we change this? Because 10 years from now, if my child accomplishes all these things in the IEP, that's great. We can say it's done, but it's not going to have helped them fully reach their potential in that further education, employment, and independent living. So Danielle, thank you so much. It's so great to have you here today. She says group hug, right? Right? Let's see. Melody says, thanks for sharing about your brother. Bethany has a ton of autoimmune issues, like your brother is struggling with no social interaction. It's tough. It is tough. And, you know, just because he's 42 doesn't mean that he wraps his brain around things like we do as adults, right? So he has a different level of understanding. And my mom has had him watch the news. So he so he can pick up enough on, like, this isn't punishment. It's not just happening in Illinois. Like, this is a big deal. And this is why we're making these changes. So, so there's so many different things that he's learning and that we're learning about him through this process. Let's see. Anna, you're so very welcome. Let's see who else. All right, we have Demetria. How do you prepare your autistic teenagers that will graduate next year, not receiving any IEP and accommodation services during this time, finding it difficult to prepare for the real world? So we're all finding it difficult to prepare for the real world. Let's just start there. Are you feeling for yourself, take out the special needs factor just a little bit, okay? We're all like, what is this? Because if we all think the world's going back to how it was, it's not. But I don't live in fear. I live in hope. I do think there's going to be a ton of silver linings that are going to come from all of this. But when you have a child who's going to graduate next year and you've got big decisions to make, and what are you going to do? This is where it gets real, right? This is where we say, what are we really going to do to move through this? You are going to have to see what community services, adult community services are available for you, Demetria. So every state calls it something different, but it's basically your Department of Human Services. Whatever state organization that is in your area, you need to start reaching out to them and making sure that you are taking advantage of every resource that is possible outside of the school system especially if your child's going to be graduating. So, for example, my brother receives support services through the state of a personal assistant. That personal assistant is considered an essential worker. So those hours, those services did not go away. So that's something that you need to look outside of the school system. The school system's resources right now are extremely limited when it comes to looking at this big picture and deciding what's going to happen with graduates next year, because everybody right now is freaking out over ESY and going back to school in the fall. And then before you know it, it's going to be graduation time. And you know what? I feel your time crunch, Demetria, because I told you, 2 daughters who are high schoolers, and they do not have IEPs. They are still making big life decisions and things. And right now they're a sophomore and junior, which means next year I will have a high school senior. And she's got decisions to make about college. Holy cow, does college look different right now than it did? She went out and got a job as a 17-year-old as an essential worker to go to work, to get in the field right now, because she wants to make sure that she's prepared as much as possible. So what can you do with your outside agencies to support your child beyond what the school can prepare? That's where I'd be looking at. All right, let me see what else we have. Oh, she says, first time in this chat room, you gave me motivation to help our son succeed. You are so very welcome. You know what? I am going to encourage you. In fact, I don't even have this one up. Let's see. Demetria, I want you to hop on over to, let me write it out for you. All right. IEPmasterclass.com. IEP Masterclass, Demetria, is where you come in for 14 days and give it a try, and it costs you $0, okay, for this masterclass. But the masterclass also includes the Special Education Inner Circle. And these kind of talks that we're doing right now, these happen every week inside of a private Facebook group where I 100% will address your questions, concerns, worries, and help you out with resources and next steps. I also have master IEP coaches who come into the inner circle to help you out and help you through the IEP masterclass. And the masterclass is not about learning special education law. You can go Google that, figure that out. The IEP masterclass is for people who are, give me some hope, give me some strategies, give me some results, give me a community that is not focused on the negative. Show me what I should be doing at the IEP table for my child. Tell me what I can be asking for, and help me through that virtual IEP meeting. Get me through those ESY plans. Help me out with the remote learning plan that needs to be permanently put in my child's IEP for when this happens again. So right now, because of the crisis, what I've done is IEP Masterclass, you sign up, it's free for 14 days. And then if you choose to stay, then it's $27 a month, but you get full talks like this where I can chat with everybody inside of the inner circle every week. Plus you get all of the course materials in the IEP Masterclass that you can pick what you need. It's not overwhelming. If you're like, I'm worried about IEP goals, then you go into the Masterclass and you watch that video. You can get it all right on your phone. You can just tap, a couple of taps, and you can watch stuff on IEP goals. You can watch things on inclusion. You can watch things on paraprofessional trainings. You can watch things on 10 questions that you have to ask at every IEP meeting, special education terminology. And I don't mean like, what does IEP mean? I'm talking about like, what do you do when it comes to the full continuum of placements, and how do you make that happen when it comes to knowing what they are, that full continuum of placements, and deciding which one is best. So I'm not talking about just what does it stand for. I'm talking about how do you do that. That's all inside of the IEP Masterclass. We're going to be working really hard on virtual IEP meetings, ESY decisions, and remote learning plans over the next 8 weeks inside of the Inner Circle and the Masterclass. So Demetria, that would be the perfect space for you to come over into that. Let's see. Okay, so Tiffany, who is a master IEP coach in Texas, she says, in Texas, it falls under personal care services or Medicaid waiver programs. My foster daughter receives PCS to help with independent living skills. So, Demetria, this is Tiffany, who's talking about where I was pointing you to outside of the school system to work with those independent living skills and getting prepped. Melody says that Bethany is graduating next year, struggling with this. Also, thanks for sharing. Yeah, we're going to have a lot of these real talks, a lot of the real talks about this. Let's see. And this is truth too. Kim is a master IEP coach. Kim, I can't remember where you're located at. I could go to myiepcoach.com and look, or if you're still here, tell me where you're located at, Kim. Kim loves to help parents really have a voice in their child's IEP in a positive way to decide what's important and what's not important to be working on. Kim is fantastic at that. She says, we are planning to move to have room for a grandparent pod for her to live in, to be semi-independent. On the flip side, my child could care less about leaving the house. Not one friend or person has reached out. She just misses sleepovers with family. Who feels that way? Who has the experience where other people are freaking out because their kids can't see their friends? And then you're like Kim and her family, and nobody's reaching out to you and your family. Nobody's talking about that. There's like one or two sad article blogs that are out there talking about isolation of special needs families and how nobody's reaching out to them. And it's written in a very pity way. And it's also written in a way that it's like, oh, don't forget, there's a few families that are feeling this. No, it is more than a few families. So like Kim says, her daughter misses sleepovers with family. That's very similar to what I was just describing about my brother and my daughters. They missed being able to hang out. The first thing, and Kim's in Indianapolis. Thank you, Kim, for sharing that. So Kim is a master IEP coach in Indianapolis who gets it. She gets it, okay? The first thing that my daughters did when I said that they could start going down to see my brother in his area is that we bought a new dice game. I forget what it's called. I should probably post on the page somewhere because it's super fun. And it's easy and it's done in 15 minutes. Yes, I'm all about it because then I feel like a good mom because I sat and I played a game, but it only took me 15 minutes because I really didn't want to. Okay, but the game has colors and numbers and motor skills of the dice, and then writing skills of checking off numbers when you get them. And I guess I would say that it's kind of a different version. Like think of like Yahtzee, where you're looking at combinations and numbers and all of that, but it's so not Yahtzee. Okay, so my daughter took it down to my brother's place and said, hey, she calls him Bud. Hey, Bud, got a new dice game. And like the interaction of him having to like use his brain and learn a new game and find the red 7 and mark it off. And then he used his calculator to tally up his score and to do all that literally brought life back to him. And that was family. So we're not at the place right now where he's going to be hanging out with any peers or friends. Even at his, Gigi's organization and that, we're not there. But Kim, I totally understand that. Let's see. Tiffany is talking to Demetria and everybody else because that is who Tiffany is. Tiffany is a helper in the special needs community in a way that I can't even explain here. She goes beyond just, see, it's like, I don't even know where to start, Tiffany, for all the things that you do in your community. It is amazing. So Louisiana has Medicaid waivers. Look into it. All 50 states have them. So again, Tiffany is a master IEP coach. She's the type of person that you get to connect with inside of the mentorship in there. So, all right, on that note, guys, I planned on being here for 15 minutes and we're like 45 minutes in. It's because it's interview day. So I'm in talking mode. I've got some warm tea with some honey to keep the voice going. This means tomorrow you won't see me here most likely because I'll have my voice on shut down because I'm on soapbox mode right now. So thank you for being here. Don't forget, you guys can hop on over to, you know what? I'm going to send you here. I'm going to send you to the IEP Masterclass to go get 14 days of everything that you need for free. And then you get the inner circle also. If you choose to stay, and I hope you do, it's $27 a month. I give you so much in there that I just want to make it accessible for you. High level IEP Masterclass training with me and master IEP coaches, helping you make the best decisions as we move through this crisis onto next steps, because I'm just going to say it again. Our shock has to be over. Our fear needs to be put aside. And it's time to start deciding what needs to happen now. So when we get back to school, we are ready to go and move forward into whatever this new normal is, because getting stuck where we're at and worrying about trying to get back what we had before, that's not where we're going to make the best decisions for the children who need us most. All right, guys, I hope to see you over at iepmasterclass.com.